Hey everyone, Mongoose Guns. Today I wanted to do a quick review of the P320 grip module from Wilson Combat and break down the main differences between the standard grip module and this one right here. Now, this module has been out for quite a while. There are a lot of video reviews already out there on YouTube for this specific grip, but I feel like a lot of YouTubers, they just sort of, tell you that it's better without really giving you the why. So here I have both frames side by side, and I'm going to be going over the exact differences all over each module. So first thing off the bat I want to talk about is size. They measure almost exactly about the same size in the grip itself. The frame length is obviously going to be the same to fit the P320 slide. Now, even though they are the same size, they do feel quite a bit different actually in terms of profile. So one very clear difference is if you look from the back, the Wilson Combat is significantly thinner. The thicker width of the original P320 module could be a better fit for you depending on your hand size, but it's just an important difference to note. Another thing that you'll notice is the Beaver Tail length is a little bit different in size. It's kind of hard to see side by side, but it's a little bit longer on the Wilson Combat, which I'm not really sure why they increased it because the bore axis on this gun is already so high anyway. So, having a longer beaver tail isn't really going to do anything just besides, taking up more space when you go to holster this either inside or outside the waistband. Another big difference in the profile is actually the mag flaring. So on the original module, there really is no flaring whatsoever. And here there is a lot of flaring, as you can see. Now, in exchange for that, you don't have these cutouts here, which I don't think are super important. So they did away with that in the Wilson Combat grip. But you can see it's quite a bit of flaring there. And then we look at the inside. That's how it looks with the angles. Going back to these cutouts here, it's not really that big of a deal not to have those. Now, if you look at the magazines, the 17 rounders were known to have an issue fitting in the original Wilson Combat grip, but that was only with the old P320 magazine. So if you look at the bottom of your magazine, your 17 rounders, if it just says Sig, then it'll fit. But if you have the older ones, which I believe came out around 2014 or so, the bottom of the magazine will actually say Sig Sauer, and those are the ones that have the issue. So if you bought a P320, especially after they fixed the drop safety issues, supposedly, depending on where you stand on that, then they should fit in this frame no problem. It is a little bit of a tighter fit. I noticed there's a little more, you kind of got to give a little more of a push. Whereas on here, it just sort of, slides right in. It's still some resistance, but it feels a lot more tighter here. But again, it'll still fit without a problem. Another quick comment about that mag flaring is that I feel like it does kind of affect the grip just ever so slightly. So, when your left hand comes in here, I feel a little bit of pressure on the bottom part of my palm. So that's just something to note in case it might be an issue for you. But for me, it definitely kind of, stuck out. It's not a big problem, but something to definitely keep a note of. Finishing up with the profile of these frames, the last major difference is really in the front. So, here it's not tapered at all, which when you go to holster it, sometimes you kind of feel a little bit of resistance just from that sharp corner. Not a big deal. Here they just tapered that off to make it a little more nice when you go to holster it. So it's definitely a cool feature. You'll see there's also another slot there on the Picatinny. So kind of opens up your options a little bit more for mounting different things. Those are the main differences in terms of profile. So when we look at the exact features on each frame, well, I guess we'll just work from the front here and just kind of go back where we came. There's actually quite a big difference in the trigger guard. This is one of the features that sort of got left out. Here, they have a lot of support for your left hand index finger, which some people use. And then it also kind of curves to prevent it from slipping off in that recoil impulse. They did the exact opposite with this frame, so not only there's nothing there, but it's also curved inward rather than outward, so your finger would be more prone to slipping off right there. Another feature they left out was this sort of guard for the slide catch. So this is where your slide catch sits. And the reason why they have this is because some people might accidentally bump that slide catch or that slide stop mid-cycle. So it could prematurely lock your slide back when you still have rounds in the mag. Here they took that out. I guess they just thought it wasn't really that important of a feature to include. For me, I never really have that problem because my thumb is always going off to the left anyway like this. But it's just something to note in case you have an issue with slide stop like that. I know some guns like H&Ks have those giant slide stop levers, and that's where you'll really see an issue with that. But the profile, I'm sure as you already know, the profile is already so small anyway that it's kind of hard to bump as it is. On the left here, just another quick note. You'll see they kind of matched the style of the original P320 frame, so they just put the location of where this is made instead. But it's like the same font and everything, which I thought was kind of nice. It definitely preserves some of that original P320 artistic style. So let's see, moving back here, I want to quickly talk about the trigger guard before I get into the grip texture. One thing that always bugged me about the P320 module is that I felt a lot of stress on my finger, my middle finger, right below that trigger guard. And even though there is a little bit of relief cut out right there, I think the edges are just still a little bit pointy, you see? And specifically on this side, actually, when my finger comes in here, I think there's a lot of pressure. And like after shooting about 200 rounds at a range, I just felt like I almost got a little bit of a callus built up right there. Now, here, you can tell they really, not only they have that relief cut on the hand, or on the grip, but it also continues up the side right there. So when I grip this, it feels a lot more comfortable, even when I really press into it. That's a really cool feature that they thought of to have that there. The last thing to really talk about is the grip texture. They have two different kinds of texturings. So the front and the back are this really nice rough sandpaper texture, and on the sides it's kind of more of this smoother texture. One thing I'll say is that the texture on the back really helps me out. You can tell if I press into it with my finger, I'm pushing pretty hard and it does not slide up. My finger really stays put. You can tell by the white in my finger how hard I'm pressing, and it's kind of glued there. Now on the sides here, it's a little bit different. It's a lot more slippery. So, you know, I'm just barely pressing into it and it slips a lot. And honestly, I think that's one thing they should improve, because when you grip it with your left hand, you know, under recoil, your left hand might feel a little less stable. And so I think that's where the texture will actually matter a lot, is to glue your left hand to the frame. So that pretty much summarizes this module. In conclusion, the pros are quite a bit. Obviously, the texturing is really great. I feel like the angle or the beaver tail or something about it just feels a lot more natural in the hand. So that's pretty good. And then, you know, the cuts in the front make it a little more smooth, and also the cuts right here. And then the mag flaring is pretty nice as well. So there's a lot of features that you get out of this module that really just don't exist on here. Some of the cons, it sort of depends on what's important to you. So not having this, I feel like, just kind of limits your options for your left hand support. And again, the mag flaring could be an issue if that gets in the way of your hand a little bit. Also, the thinness of it could be a problem. You know, it's kind of hard to talk about pros and cons because it really just depends on what you need or what you're looking for. For me, the cons, I would say I would prefer just to have the grip a little bit larger. Now, I'm not really sure exactly how they could do that. It would take some experimentation, I think. But a couple ideas is that they could sort of increase the length in the front so that my fingers can get a little more support without having to come all the way back here. That'd be kind of nice. Another thing they can do is sort of a little bit like the Glock, where they just put more of a hump here, so that way my left hand kind of has more room in the bottom to come in. And then I think the other main con that probably everyone would agree with is the texturization here. It's okay, but I think they really need to improve it, give it a little more traction. I think that would help out a lot without really costing anything. The longer Beaver Tail, it's not really that big of a deal, but I just think it doesn't need to be that long. But that's just my opinion, I guess. And really, I don't want to tell you that this grip is, you have to buy it or you shouldn't buy it. I think when it comes to grips, it's all subjective at the end of the day. I will say, at least in my opinion, I think it is a step up of this grip right here in most ways. Honestly, the only reason why I would pick the original grip is just maybe for the width. I think the width kind of might help my hand a little bit better. But other than that, I think it's a vast improvement in so many other ways. A lot of people in the P320 community, they agree this grip is worth getting, but I recommend at least just trying it out in case, this video wasn't enough to give you, all the details you need. It's always good to try out a grip in your hand anyway. Most gun shops, if they carry a P320, a lot of them, they also will have the Wilson Combat 320, which is basically a P320 but made with all the Wilson Combat parts, including the grip. So if you can get your hands on that, that should give you a good idea of whether or not it might be the right fit for you. I think one last quick comment I want to make about the grip in general is that, and all of these grips really, is that they will either work or they don't. And there's not really an in-between. A lot of other guns on the market, they have some kind of backstrap system. I just think with the P320, they need to start incorporating some kind of idea like that because, here, if I want to go from medium to large, now I have these two grips that just take up a lot of space, whereas I could have just had, one little tiny piece and just add that on. And, that also goes to the Wilson Combat because, again, I really like this grip, but I think for people with larger hands, there might just need to be a little bit of a slight change. I know there is a module out there that has the side panels and back straps you can change, but I think that's a rather expensive one, and it's not offered for the M17. So, at some point I would like to see that they include that. And that reminds me, one more thing I wanted to mention is that the price for this module is $67, I believe. And then if you order it online, shipping and tax will bring that to, I think for me, I paid about like $82. So, it's not the biggest purchase, but at the same time, it's not a very light purchase either. And I think for that kind of money, it would be nice to have a little more modularity with the frame, especially because the P320 is meant to be a modular handgun. And really in the whole firearms world, for handguns, I think the P320 frames are, really the least modular on the market. So that part's always surprised me. Who knows, maybe in the future they'll come out with that, either Wilson Combat or Sig themselves. So, we don't really know, what kind of parts are going to be available, 5-10 years from now, but just something that I think should be talked about in that space. And one last comment before I end the video is that I think Sig should really consider selling the M17 with this module already out there because so many people swear that you have to have this module. Then it would make sense just to save money for the buyer just to, get that frame already with your initial purchase. And on that note, I think they also should really sell the M17 fire control unit separately in case you want to build a custom M17. Again, the reason why I got the M17 over the original P320 is because of that safety, especially with the infamous drop safety issues. Having that thumb safety there would be, a really nice option for a custom 320. So, in the future, hopefully they do that. But for now, if you do want an M17 with this module, you have to make those two purchases. And it ends up, becoming quite a lot. So with that money, you have to make the decision whether or not you even want a gun like this in the first place, or if you want to save up for something like, shadow systems or, an FN or something a little more pricey. But in any case, that's everything I got. Let me know what you think. Do you like these modules? Do you have one? Are you planning to get one? I'd definitely love to hear your thoughts on all of that. And that's all I got. Until next time. Thanks, guys.